And now, the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
Several of you wanted to know last week why I didn't mention the ascendancy of Rachel Levine to the admiralship. I bet you can guess why, but I will have comment on Rachel Levine's becoming an admiral next week, because this week we've got some important things to talk about. In Pennsylvania, my home state, there are several statewide judicial races on the ballot on Tuesday. And since this is our last chance to talk before Election Day, I wanted to talk about each one of them, because the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in particular has become the battleground for so many political fights, because an activist court, which frankly gives new meaning to the word activist, has undertaken to do several blatantly political things, overstepping their bounds at every turn. Most notably, the decision by the Supreme Court to engage in judicial gerrymandering, something that the Constitution specifically assigns to the legislature. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court stepped in and took over. And last year, 2020, we saw how the court impacted elections in a variety of ways, some of them obvious, some of them less so. But their decision to keep a third party, the Green Party, off of the ballot clearly changed the dynamic of the November election, and they're changing the rules, creating one set of rules for one county, another set of rules for another, saying, well, these are the rules, but we're not going to apply them right now. Really had fundamental, important impact on the Supreme Court. And now Tuesday's election is just a couple of days away. Rarely does the Wall Street Journal weigh in on statewide judicial races anywhere in the country, but they did this week, endorsing Kevin Brobson for the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania. That says a lot. I won't even try to improve on what my friends at the Wall Street Journal said, but I do think it's important to focus on the Supreme Court race. Not only is Kevin Brobson a superior candidate in every way, currently the president judge of the Commonwealth Court, who has written some great opinions which were later overturned by the Supreme Court, a judicial scholar, someone of incredible judicial temperament, but also a really good man. I've known Kevin for a long time, and I can attest to the fundamental character of this really, really good man. And there are other candidates up for statewide judicial office in Pennsylvania, and I hope that our friends will look at them, not only vote for them, but work for them between now and Tuesday, because you've got Meg Sullivan, a dedicated prosecutor who's spent her life putting criminals in jail, running for the Superior Court. And Drew Crompton, who incidentally went to the same tiny little high school that I did, running for a full term on the Commonwealth Court. He currently serves there by appointment, and again has done a superior job. Look at some of the opinions that he's written, which were later overturned by the Supreme Court. And Stacy Wallace, a president of her own bar association, somebody from rural Pennsylvania, and I think rural Pennsylvanians really want and deserve representation on our state's high court. So it's four great candidates: Kevin Brobson, Meg Sullivan, Drew Crompton, and Stacy Wallace on Tuesday. Please make an effort not only to vote for them on Tuesday, but to talk to every friend, relative, colleague, associate that you can between now and Election Day. It really is vitally important. And it's late October and the Fall Classic is underway. And I wonder, as they head to Atlanta, why Major League Baseball isn't heading to Denver. If you remember this summer, Major League Baseball moved the All-Star game from Atlanta, hurting that city and its people, to Denver. Why? Because the Georgia legislature believed that voter identification was a good thing to have before people voted. Think about the insanity of that move, and then kind of ask about the hypocrisy of Major League Baseball as the World Series is being played in Atlanta. And we saw something really amazing early in the series. Charlie Morton takes a 100-mile-an-hour plus line drive off of his leg. It breaks his leg, but he doesn't leave the game. He ends up pitching to the next three batters, putting all of them out, and then retiring for the game and for the season. We hope that he has successful surgery and heals well and recuperates fully. But you talk about a profile in courage, look at Charlie Morton. And for now, that is the best 60-ish seconds of your week.
Senator Hawley.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Attorney General Garland, on October 4th, you issued an unprecedented memo that involves the Department of Justice and the FBI and local school districts, local school boards, nothing like it in our country's history. It was based, you've testified, on this letter from the National School Board Association that we now know the White House was involved in writing. They've retracted the letter. They've apologized for the letter. They say they regret the letter, but you won't retract the memo and said earlier that you have no regrets. And you've defended yourself repeatedly today before this committee by saying, well, you're focused on violence. But now, of course, we've seen the memo from your own Justice Department advising state and local and other prosecutors about all of the different federal causes of action that they can bring against parents that are not about violence, they're about harassment and intimidation. I'm looking here at this memo. It identifies no fewer than 13 possible federal crimes involving harassment and intimidation, including making annoying phone calls. Do you think a parent who makes a phone call to a school board member that she has elected, that school board member deems annoying, should be prosecuted, General Garland?
No, I don't. And the Supreme Court has made quite clear that the word intimidation with respect to the constitutional protection is one that directs a threat to a person with the intent of placing the victim in fear of bodily harm or death. Prosecutors who investigate these cases know the Supreme Court's. This is a very famous leading case.
Prosecutors do, but parents don't, General Garland. Do you think that a parent who looks at the 13 different federal crimes that your Justice Department has identified they might be subject to and prosecuted for, like making annoying phone calls, do you think that they're going to feel that they're welcome to speak up at a school board meeting? How about this one? They could be prosecuted for using the internet, I guess that would be Facebook, in a way that might cause emotional distress to a victim. Is that a crime of violence?
Senator, I haven't seen the memo that you're
Why
talking
haven't
about,
you?
and I don't. Even from the description, it doesn't sound like it was addressed to parents. But if you
No, it wasn't addressed to parents. It was addressed to prosecutors. That's the problem. Why haven't you seen the memo?
I don't know why I haven't. I don't look at every. I do not get every memo that every U.S. attorney sends out. But if you're
wait a minute. I just want to be sure I understand this. This is a memorandum that collects 13 different federal crimes parents could be charged with. It has United States Department of Justice on the top of it, and you're telling me you haven't seen it?
Who's the memo from, Senator?
The United States Department of Justice, United States Attorney for the District of Montana.
I have not seen a memo from the District of Montana.
Not high enough priority for you?
It's not. That's not the question. I don't.
It is the question. Answer my question. Is it not a high enough priority for you when you're threatening parents with 13 different federal crimes? These aren't crimes of violence. You've testified today you're focused on violence. That's not what your U.S. attorneys, they work for you. That's not what they're saying. You haven't seen it because it's not a high enough priority, or what?
Question of priority. No one has sent me that memo, so I haven't seen it.
What do you mean no one has sent you the memo? You run the United States Department of Justice, do you not?
There are 115,000 employees of the Department of Justice.
Indeed, and you are in charge of every one of them. And this was a
not
sufficiently important case that you issued a memo. You, over your signature, issued a memo involving the FBI and the Department of Justice in local school boards, local school districts. Your U.S. attorneys are now threatening prosecution with 13 different crimes, but it's not a high enough priority for you. It got lost in the mix.
I'll send again. I've never seen that memo.
That's what concerns me, General Garland.
Well, it wasn't sent to me. I hope you will assure your constituents that what we are concerned about here is violence and threats of violence.
That only leads me to conclude, General Garland, all I can conclude from this is either that you're not in control of your own department, or that, more likely, what I think to be the case, is that you knew full well that this is exactly the kind of thing that would happen. When you issued your memo, when you involved the Department of Justice and all of its resources, and the FBI and all of its resources, in local school boards and local school districts, you knew that federal prosecutors would start collecting crimes that they could use against parents. You knew they would advise state and local officials that these are all of the ways parents might be prosecuted. You knew that that was the likely outcome, and that's exactly what's happened. And we're talking about parents like Scott Smith, who's behind me over my shoulder. This is a father from Loudoun County, Virginia. Here he is at a school board meeting. He was forcibly restrained. He was assaulted. He was arrested. Why? Because he went to an elected school board meeting. He's a voter, by the way. He went to an elected school board meeting to raise the fact that his daughter was assaulted, sexually assaulted, in a girl's restroom by a boy. This is what happened to him. Now, you testified last week before the House that you didn't know anything about this case. I find that extraordinary because the letter that you put so much weight on, the letter that's now been retracted, it cites this case. It cites Mr. Scott's case directly. There's a news article cited in the letter. It's discussed in the letter, but you testified you just couldn't remember it. Maybe this will refresh your memory. Do you think people like Scott Smith, do you think parents who show up to complain about their children being assaulted ought to be treated like this man right here?
Parents who show up to complain about school boards are protected by the First Amendment.
Do you think that they ought to be prosecuted
They
in
are
the different ways that your U.S. attorneys are identifying?
If what they're doing is complaining about what the school board is doing, policies, curriculum, anything else that they want to, as long as they're not committing threats of violence, then they should not be prosecuted, and they can't be.
Let me ask you about this. Several of my Democrat colleagues have today, just today in this hearing, multiple times have compared parents who show up at school board meetings, like Mr. Smith here, have compared them to criminal rioters. You think that's right? You think that a parent who shows up at a school board meeting, who has a complaint, who wants to voice that complaint, and maybe she doesn't use exactly the right grammar, you think they're akin to criminal rioters? Do you agree with that?
I do not, and I do not remember any senator here making that comparison.
Oh, really? These people are just like the folks who came here on January 6th and in the riot at the Capitol?
I don't think they were referring to the picture that you're showing there.
Well, I certainly would hope not, but they were referring to parents who go to school board meetings. Mr. Smith is a parent who went to a school board meeting. I'll leave it at this, General Garland. You have weaponized the FBI and the Department of Justice. Your U.S. attorneys are now collecting and cataloging all the ways that they might prosecute parents like Mr. Smith because they want to be involved in their children's education and they want to have a say in their elected officials. It's wrong. It is unprecedented, to my knowledge, in the history of this country, and I call on you to resign. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Cruz.